The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hey folks, Bryan Keene here. You know, summer's over. We're entering the fall and then the winter. Halloween's coming up, Thanksgiving, and then of course the holiday shopping season. Speaking of the holiday shopping season, let me tell you about subculturecorsets.com. They've got everything you need for everyone on your list for this holiday season. Clothing, accessories, gifts, books, you name it, they've got it. They sponsor every show on the Project Entertainment Network, including this one. So please give them your business. Visit subculturecorsets.com.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Bryan Keene. Amanda Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocastic on hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizonged leggings? Wait, are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Bryan Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Bryan Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Bryan Keene.
And I am Christopher Golden. Bryan, I feel like we should get some 1970s, 1980s Marvel bullpen names for ourselves. I'm saying this completely the spur of the moment, and I don't have any suggested names.
All right, well, I could either be Battlin' Bryan Keene or Bryan Peachy Keene.
Bryan Peachy Keene. Battlin' Bryan Keene is probably what you'd like, but Bryan Peachy Keene seems to me to be the better choice. I was going to suggest Bouncin' Bryan Keene.
There we go, Bouncin' Bryan Keene. You can be Christopher Golden Child, or
I like that one.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we'll just go with that.
All right, well,
I was going to say Crispy Chris Golden, but you're not the one who set himself on fire earlier this summer, so I don't know that works.
Wait, you could be Blazin' Bryan Keene.
There we go. There it is. There it is.
All right, well, in any case, Bryan, I say Excelsior, true believers.
Excelsior indeed, true believers. And Excelsior to author David Bryan, who sponsored this week's show. His new novel, The Strange Case at Misty Ridge, that is a supernatural cosmic mystery partially inspired by the works of William Hope Hodgson. If you like occult detectives, what is an occult detective? Our younger listeners are asking. Chris, explain to them what an occult detective is.
Well, firstly, who wouldn't like occult detectives? Because what occult detectives are detectives who investigate instances of the occult, usually mysteries related to the supernatural.
That's right. Much like our own defender, Damon Hellstrom, the son of Satan. He would qualify as an occult detective.
Yeah, and an exorcist. Devil Slayer could be considered an occult detective in his own way as well.
That's right. So if you like that sort of thing, please check out The Strange Case at Misty Ridge by David Bryan. It is available right now in paperback and ebook. In fact, the ebook is free if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. So get on that and support him for supporting this show.
There you go. We like that. We like people who support this show. All right, so the Defenders, 99 and 100 today. 99 and 100, both written by the team. Written by J.M. DeMatteis. 99 drawn by Don Perlin with Joe Sinnott on inks.
That's right. And this is the end, the grand finale of the Six-Fingered Hand saga.
You know, I want to point something out we haven't talked about yet. There's just a moment in time in Marvel history. The editor-in-chief at Marvel at this time was a guy named Jim Shooter, who Marvel fans of old will certainly recognize. Jim Shooter went on to be in charge of Valiant Comics when it launched its first iteration many years ago. And Shooter started in comics at the age of 15, Brian?
14 or 15,
14 or 15, writing comics professionally, getting paid to do it at that age. It's kind of amazing. He does not have the best reputation for his tenure as editor-in-chief at Marvel. There was a lot of upheaval. But it's clear to me, at least at this time, that editor-in-chief Jim Shooter was not paying a whole hell of a lot of attention to the Defenders. Because
why did you say that?
Well, he's known for interfering. He's known for coming in and really sort of laying down the Shooter law and interfering with a lot of things, and in many ways sort of simplifying some things. And I just have the feeling that he wasn't paying that much attention.
See, I got to tell you, I always had sympathy for Jim Shooter. I mean, yes, I've talked to a lot of creatives who were at Marvel at the time, who, certainly bumped heads with him. He bumped heads with everybody in the bullpen. But you have to kind of look at the Marvel comics he was inheriting. Somebody had to get the trains running on time.
Right.
And Jim Shooter did do that.
Oh, yeah, listen, I actually really like Jim Shooter. I've met him many times. He was about to give me one of my very first breaks in comics by hiring me to write some issues of Magnus Robot Fighter at Valiant.
No kidding.
And then he said, call me as soon as Unity, which was a massive Valiant crossover. Call me as soon as Unity is over and we'll get this scheduled. And I called him when Unity was over, and they said Jim no longer worked for the company. He'd been fired. So that's just yet another one of my my misadventures in comics. So yeah, I mean, good guy. I liked him a lot, and but yeah. So but everybody I know who worked for him when he was at Marvel, there are always these stories, as you say, about people butting heads with him. But you're right. Maybe it was a cultural thing, but
I don't know if he was paying attention to what J.M. DeMatteis and Don Perlin and Joe Sinnott were doing or not. But whether he was or wasn't, what they were doing was incredible. This is, as we said, the conclusion of the Six-Fingered Hand. This is issue 99, and DeMatteis brings everybody back. The original Defenders, they even tell you on the cover, the Defenders with the Silver Surfer, the Incredible Hulk, and the Savage Submariner. We haven't seen much of Hulk or Surfer since DeMatteis came on the book, but they're back along with Hellcat, Son of Satan, Valkyrie, Doc Strange, and the newest Defender, Gargoyle. Oh, and Devil Slayer, as we head into this finale.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting finale, of course. I suppose it's not the conclusion of the Six-Fingered Hand saga, but it is the conclusion of the Six-Fingered Hand. So we'll explain that momentarily.
That's right.
We
open with a one-page recap. Actually, I'm wrong about that. One-page recap of everything that has gone before. The Defenders' battles with the Six-Fingered Hand, the town of Citrusville, Florida, being sucked into another dimension, Hellcat's possession, the Man-Thing's possession, and how the Defenders went through a dimensional portal and have emerged into sheer madness.
Exactly. And now we face the final conflict. So, the arriving Defenders are come face to face with Maya, who introduces him or herself as the chairman of the Six-Fingered Hand, and shows that the Hulk, Submariner, Clea, and the Silver Surfer have been captured. Maya says, my favorite line in this issue, well, why are you standing there? Why are we standing here like slack-jawed apes? Which, honestly, Brian, sounds like something you would say.
So So if you're casting the Marvel Universe from our group of friends, I'm Maya.
Well, at least with that
Chairman
line.
of the Six-Fingered Hand.
Yeah, at least with that. That actually makes a lot of sense now that we think about it. In any case, Son of Satan throws his trident, and I'm a little sad that there's no reference to the nether metal or whatever. It breaks my heart. Oh, wait, no, I take it back, because in the next panel, Maya says, take back your nether trident for now. When we get Mark DeMatteis on this show, we have to ask him about his predilection for referring to Damon Hellstrom's nether trident. The nether metal. What the fuck does that even mean? Anyway, then I find this moment really interesting, and it's a moment where the defenders stand around and chat to try to work out what the hell's going on. And Maya is just kind of talking to them. He says, let the party begin. And then it's just this long conversation with the demon who's been plaguing them for all of this time.
I would argue, Chris, I have a strong suspicion that comic book superstar writer Brian Michael Bendis, who is about the same age as you and I, grew up reading J.M. DeMatteis.
Okay.
Because Bendis does a lot of this. I don't think he does it quite as well as DeMatteis does here. But, Bendis has a lot of scenes like this, and no matter what book he's writing, where instead of, the typical comic book punch-up, the characters stand around and have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting, and it also provides this James Bond villain atmosphere. And then basically Doctor Strange goes, and Maya stands there while Doctor Strange speaks to the captive Clea and asks her how this happened. And Clea explains that Maya somehow created a false image of Doctor Strange's astral form or mental projection, and summoned. And I talked to Clea, who then summoned the Silver Surfer, Submariner, and the Hulk. And then we get back to reminding the readers that the other demons are also standing around. The other members of the Six-Fingered Hand are also standing there, doing nothing to attack the defenders. They're just chilling. They might as well be having tea.
Right. Right. We then find out Maya, after Doctor Strange tries to free Clea and the other original defenders and fails, Maya explains that, where they are is in Citrusville, except Citrusville is no longer in Florida. You'll remember where it was in Florida. That is now a giant hole in the ground in the shape of a six-fingered hand. Citrusville has been sucked through the nexus of realities, and occupies what is basically hell. And Maya wants to give the defenders a tour of this new Citrusville, but the other demons don't think that Gargoyle should be allowed to come along. They're basically taunting and teasing Gargoyle, who you'll remember was created by the Six-Fingered Hand.
Exactly. Well, and Isaac Christensen was transformed into the Gargoyle by them, and they trapped him for his betrayal. They trapped him in this form. So particularly Avarish is mocking Gargoyle and teasing him like a schoolyard bully. And for his trouble, Valkyrie boots him in the ass.
Yep.
Yes, that literally happens on the page. Valkyrie boots him in the ass. And again, like I sound like I'm making fun of this issue, but I actually love it so much. In any case, they take those other defenders, and Gargoyle stays behind.
That's right.
Because they don't think that he's anything to be concerned about.
That's right. We then transition back to Earth, where Kyle Richmond, a.k.a. Nighthawk, who regular listeners will remember, is now paralyzed when the sun is up. He's lying in bed, feeling sorry for himself, trying to get over it. And suddenly, Patsy Walker, a.k.a. the Hellcat, shows up literally out of thin air. Remember, she has a shadow cloak, just like Devil Slayer's shadow cloak. It allows both of them to traverse dimensions. She shows up, and she picks up the paralyzed Kyle, and they disappear back into thin air.
There you go. And then we have, you should continue because I know you love this bit.
Yeah, we then have another interlude. On a cheerful suburban street in Montclair, New Jersey. Now, you'll remember Montclair, New Jersey is where Patsy Walker's house was. And that house was destroyed a few issues back. And you'll remember that some kids were playing in it, and they found the shadow cloak, and a demon came out of the shadow cloak. Well, now the kids have brought their mother back, and when they get to the ruins, the demons have multiplied. There are a dozen demons now in the ruins in New Jersey. So it's almost, Chris, as if hell is coming to Earth.
Hell is spilling out onto Earth yet again. Well, then, so we're back in hell, or we're back in this limbo realm where Maya and the other members of the Six-Fingered Hand have dragged Citrusville, Florida, and basically they're walking, like buddies down the street with the Defenders as Maya gives that tour he wanted to give, and shows them some of the residents of the of Citrusville, and basically the people have been turned into what Maya says they always were beneath their gibbering exteriors, dull, faceless zeros.
That's right,
and they basically had their faces erased.
Yeah, there's some great line work here by Don Perlin. You think of Mary San Giovanni's The Hollower, or Slender Man, or things of that nature. Just these faceless human beings. It's actually quite frightening, or at least it was to young Bryan back in 1981.
Yep. Well, so we continue the tour. It's basically there's this horrifying 2/3 of a page image of what's essentially a carnival in hell. There's a carousel with what will appear to me to be like kids riding demons or kids riding adults who are suffering. There are people being sort of forced to dance forever. It says, the faceless brass band blares mindlessly, each twisted note an insult to music. Sounds like some bands I know. Rag bedraped dancers prance and caper, their movements spasmodic, obscene. The smell of roasting flesh wafts up from vendors' stalls as gleeful children ride a hellish merry-go-round, whipping their living mounts. So that's some pretty grim shit.
It is.
And that is enough, Bryan. It's the last straw for Damon Hellstrom. He's been listening long enough.
That's right.
There you go.
He will not allow such indignities to be heaped upon humankind. He then pulls out his
nether
metal trident and says, "Taste of my soul fire, demons. Taste of my wrath."
I feel like you should say that at the beginning of every show.
I think I should.
As long as you never use your Hellcat voice again.
Hey, by the way, that reminds me, a quick aside. Our apologies to listeners on Spotify. I know people listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, a bunch of different platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Our Spotify listeners, our last episode, it is more than 16 minutes long. What happened is engineer Tommy Clark, I think, hit upload too fast, and or something. I don't know, but the entire show hasn't been uploaded to Spotify. I'm told that they're working on getting that fixed. So
yeah, it's been fixed on other platforms, right? But
Spotify,
but
Spotify listeners did not get to hear my Hellcat impression.
Oh well, perhaps Tommy should not fix it to save Spotify listeners the discomfort of listening to your Hellcat impression. Speaking of impressions, and this is a total tangent, I discovered yesterday that my son Daniel, who has co-hosted Three Guys with Beards, does a spot-on impression of oh God, now his name God, now his name escapes me. I'm 51 now, Bryan. This is what happens. The guy from The Princess Bride, Wallace Shawn. So Daniel does a spot-on impression of Wallace Shawn, which I discovered earlier. That's apropos of nothing, but we're talking about impressions. Anyway,
but you got to plug in for three guys with beards. So.
That's true. In any case,
well, anyway, Maya and the six-fingered hand, they're not going to allow this. So then, finally, the comic book moment you've been waiting for breaks out. It's the Defenders versus the six-fingered hand,
which lasts all of a page and a half. The six-fingered hand causes first the faceless residents of Citrusville to attack the Defenders, and then causes a bunch of little demons to gather around and attack. I do like this moment where they're arguing, saying, you can't fight back against these people because they're innocent. And I like the Son of Satan's line, "Tell me this, while we are so nobly sparing these pathetic people, who in Hades is going to spare us?" And Valkyrie actually agrees. She basically says, if we've got to kill these people to save ourselves, so be it. I thought that was unlike her.
That's right.
So people start returning to normal. Doctor Strange says, look up, and he sees that Gargoyle has freed Clea, the Hulk, Silver Surfer, and the Submariner.
That's right. The original Defenders swinging back into action to save the day.
Yep. And then Citrusville and its people vanish as if they'd never been there. But also, the demons of the six-fingered hand start to shrink.
And they say,
No, this cannot be.
Oh no, here we go.
Hey, Chris, it's Elmo.
If only it turned out that Elmo was the danger behind this. But you're right. They shrink into these tiny, useless demons. And then, essentially, Gargoyle tells the story of how he saved or freed the other Defenders. And then we find that Maya is the only one who hasn't shrunk, Bryan. And
there's a reason for that.
What's that?
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, because Maya is not Maya at all. Who is Maya, Bryan?
Maya is, of course, Mephisto, Lord of the Netherworld, one of Marvel's aspects of Satan himself, a foe of both Doctor Strange and the Silver Surfer. And
what's really interesting about this, and this is, I was waiting for this reveal to talk about this, and we'll talk about it more in a moment in issue 100. In my mind, what DeMatteis sets up here is always the fundamental truth of what hell is in the Marvel Universe. It's followed up in other Marvel comics of the era, and later abandoned, and we'll talk about it. But I hate the fact that it's abandoned. But
it infuriates me that it's abandoned. However, what I like about this page, while the rest of the Defenders are learning how Gargoyle accomplished all this, and the big reveal, of course, that Mephisto was behind all this, the Hulk, just a brief one panel aside, the Hulk is not paying attention to any of that. The Hulk is fascinated by the tiny little demons, and he thinks to himself, little men look funny, like silly bugs. That's what Hulk is taken away from all of this.
I do like that. They're all having this conversation, which Hulk is completely ignoring. Yeah, that's how, I feel a lot when I'm, listening to people talk at conventions. Well, actually, that's a lie. At conventions, I'm paying attention usually. But what I find is that when people start talking about their normal jobs, my mind, if you're not talking about movies or books or comics or, someplace I would like to travel someday.
Chris, think about reading Defenders.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, wait, how can I turn this conversation to Mephisto? Anyway.
Well, yeah, while Mephisto has revealed himself to the Defenders, we get one final interlude. Hellcat and Nighthawk materialize in the Arizona desert. Hellcat takes Kyle down into a cave where human beings' souls are merged with the very walls of the cave. They're shrieking in agony. She takes him before a throne. Kyle says, "What is this place? Patsy, for heaven's sake, say something." And Hellcat says, "Heaven, See, I'm not even going to do the impression. Yes, heaven's light and this are sometimes mistaken. And a voice says, that is true, my child. And revealed sitting on the throne is Satan. Not Doctor Doom, not Mephisto. No, this is the fucking devil.
The father of Damon Hellstrom.
Mm-hmm.
So when they call him the son of Satan, they ain't kidding.
That's right.
Now, here, let's talk about this now. Because we get into it right here. As you said, on the top of the next page, Damon Hellstrom says to Mephisto, although you are a separate manifestation of my father's evil, Mephisto, you are no less disgusting to me. So DeMatteis is clearly defining here that Mephisto and Satan, much like if those of you who've read Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion stories, the idea here is that many of these devils in Marvel Comics universe are actually just manifestations of the same being. They're separate consciousnesses, but they're created by people's belief in different avatars of the evil that is Satan. Right?
That's right. That's right. And we then get, I think this is brilliant, because this goes all the way back to issue 92. If you go back and listen to that episode, we cautioned you that seemingly disparate plot threads were all going to be tied together. And this is where DeMatteis does it. Mephisto explains that it is none other than Doctor Strange who has made all of this possible. He then traps the Defenders in some kind of psychic sphere, some kind of cage, a floating bubble. And, he explains to the Defenders that, if you remember back in issue 92, when Eternity's other selves nearly destroyed the fabric of the multiverse, reality was stretched beyond belief. And that is when the six-fingered hand knew that time for action was right. The doorways that keep hell from invading Earth were weakened. And when Doctor Strange kept using his transportation spell, for example, when he sent the Defenders to London to fight Nebulon, which took place in issue 93, every time he did that, he weakened the doorways of reality. Devil Slayer, using the Shadow Cloak, also contributed to this. And this allowed the six-fingered hand to begin their invasion. And what that has led to, Chris, tell us what that leads to on the final splash page.
Well, Bryan, it leads to Mephisto with the drama saying, welcome to, and this is where Mephisto has been taking them in this bubble, home. Welcome to hell on earth. Yes,
that's right.
We have not just Satan, not just Mephisto, but we have Satanish.
That's right.
And we have Thog.
That's right.
Two other manifestations or avatars of the evil of Satan who have been established in Marvel Comics history at this point.
That's right.
And Hellcat has now turned back into her possessed self. It's the evil demon Patsy Walker. Right. And then we have Nighthawk in costume, and because it's now night, because hell is eternally on Earth, he is able to be standing up.
That's right. And we also have Manhattan in flames. Times Square is burning. Demons are flinging people from buildings. They're dragging people out of crashed buses. There's a human head boiling in a pothole. There's a giant tentacled monster coming out of a sewer and clutching a corpse. And Satan welcomes the Defenders to hell on Earth.
Yep. Satan says, bring it, bitches. No. All right. So, what we've been leading up to, Bryan, Defenders number 100. And although there's not much going on this cover, it is still one of my favorite covers because it's the Defenders and in big burning letters, 100th issue. We have Doctor Strange in the middle and lined up on the cover onto either side. Our entire cast: Hulk, Valkyrie, Nighthawk, Hellcat, Devil Slayer, Doctor Strange, Clea, Gargoyle, Son of Satan, Submariner, and the Silver Surfer. Now, I just want to say that this kind of this size group was not normally seen. Occasionally you'd see it in the Avengers, but not normally seen in Marvel Comics. It was sort of typical of these big events at DC in the 70s, especially Justice Society and Justice League crossovers and all of that stuff. But I love the fact that this is not one of those stories, but it still contains, 10 heroes, 11 heroes?
Yeah, I can count here real quick. Hulk, Valkyrie, Gargoyle, Submariner, Silver Surfer.
11.
That's 5. Doctor Strange, Clea, Son of Satan, Devil Slayer. Yeah, nine heroes plus Nighthawk and Hellcat on the ground. So, yeah, 11 heroes.
Yeah, crazy. So we get to Dynamic Defenders number 100, at which point we have a quick recap, one-page recap, where Satan is explaining, and the opportunity is taken by DeMatteis and Perlin to show us Dracula and Ghost Rider and Asmodeus Jones again, to sort of recap the various pawns that have been part of this game. And then we get a great 2-page splash by Perlin and Sinnott, showing a sort of larger version of the scene we ended with last time. I, Satan, Lord of Hell, welcome you to your new world. You'll grow to like it here.
Yep. Doctor Strange is having none of this. He finally goes full Hulk. He says, Satan and his other manifestations of Thog, Mephisto, and Satanish, they've been the true foemen all along. They used me, used the Defenders. I should have known. Silver Surfer is trying to calm down Doctor Strange. And some of the Defenders agree with the Surfer, and some of the more hot-headed Defenders disagree. We see Namor, the Hulk, and Son of Satan charge Satan and his other manifestations, intending to do battle. And Satan and Hellcat, who now seems to be completely given over to her father, the devil.
Well, you've just jumped the gun here.
I did. Fuck, I'm sorry. All right, spoiler alert. The big reveal at the end is that Patsy is actually Satan's daughter.
Well, the big reveal is that Satan claims that Patsy is his daughter, and she totally believes him. Now, whether or not that's true, we'll find out eventually. But for the moment, Satan is claiming Patsy is his daughter.
Right.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, anyway, he makes quick work of the Hulk, or actually Hellcat makes quick work of the Hulk, Son of Satan, and Submariner.
Yeah, exactly. That basically takes them out of the fight, and then that's when he says that he is her father, or she says that he is her father, and
words
it says
that shock even the dim-brained Hulk.
Exactly. And induce all Patsy Walker's dearest friends and acquaintances to open-mouthed stupefaction. It's a great panel with them all just like slack-jawed apes, Bryan. Yes. So basically, Satan then tells a story that seems pretty realistic here.
Yes.
He talks about how he disguised himself when marrying Patsy Walker's mother. And this is the reason everybody thought that it was the Hellcat or the cat costume previously owned by Greer Nelson, a.k.a. Tigra. That it was the costume that gave her these abilities, these acrobatic skills, and the ability to do some superheroing out there. But in fact, we've recently seen that she doesn't need the costume to do all those things. And Satan claims that this is because the costume basically jump-started her demonic inheritance, that he had screwed up with Damon Hellstrom and with Satana, who in comics continuity has recently died, and he wanted to give time to let Patsy develop, but Valkyrie says, Patsy, what he says is lies. I know it. Prove him wrong, my friend. Turn away from him and join us. We can help you. How does that go, Bryan?
It does not go well. And this is some great writing here by DeMatteis, playing up the friendship we've seen develop between, Hellcat and Valkyrie since Hellcat first joined this book. Help me, Valkyrie. I don't need the aid of an Asgardian witch. You are no friend of mine, Sal, and you never have been. Do you hear me? Never. How does Valkyrie respond? Does she punch? Does she get angry? No. She weeps. She cries. She says, I hear you, Patsy, all too well.
It's interesting, too, to note that, remember, this isn't Barbara Norris. This is the Valkyrie of Asgardian legend brought to tears. This is the only time, at this point that we've seen this kind of emotion from her, because Patsy is her best friend.
Yep.
So I'm getting a little verklempt myself, Brian.
And that's what Nighthawk says. He grabs Hellcat by the arm. We see a flash of the old Nighthawk there for a second. He says, what are you doing? You just tossed around someone who loves you, who died for you. And, Hellcat picks up Kyle and tosses him as well. But luckily, Nighthawk has friends. One friend in particular who catches him and says, don't worry, Bird Nose. Hulk has you.
I don't know where it is in this, but I also want to point out that at one point, Hulk refers to the array of satanic avatars as fire faces. So that's the nickname for them all, the fire faces. Actually, that would be a great new Marvel series about the avatars of Satan. Anyway, so then we get sort of the introduction of Thog and Satanish and Mephisto again. They're sort of arguing about Satan's plan. But of course, Mephisto says, be calm, Satanish. I'm sure our brother knows what he's doing. Doctor Strange, they basically start arguing. And basically, it seems to be that Satan is really more interested in antagonizing Hellstrom than he is in defeating the Defenders.
That's right. He teases Damon by revealing that, as we've pointed out in previous episodes, that there's been something of romantic feelings developing between Patsy and Damon. And Satan teases him. I sense displeasure in your voice, my son. Could it have anything to do with your sister, with feelings that have softened your heart these past few weeks? Feelings, perhaps, of love?
Awkward. This is like Empire Strikes Back, right?
Yeah, or any V.C. Andrews novel.
So Damon is definitely uncomfortable with the idea that he's fallen in love with his own sister. And then basically, Satan decides to turn this into the classic Marvel Comics MacGuffin chase comic.
That's right.
Because when you have 11 heroes, 10 heroes in this case,
yep.
What the hell do? You have to break them up and give them all their own individual mission.
That's right. We should explain to readers. There are natural laws that govern the universe, laws that even Satan, the devil himself, has to obey. This once-in-a-millennia opportunity for hell to take over Earth takes 6 days, 6 hours, and 6 minutes.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so Satan offers Doctor Strange a deal. If you enter into 3 contests with my manifestations, Thog, Satanish, and Mephisto, and unleash the light in darkness's heart, I will take my minions and leave this world. Fail, and for the next dozen ages of man, Satan rules the earth.
There you go. And Doctor Strange feels they have no choice. They have to agree. Of course, it doesn't occur to them to wonder why Satan is giving them this opportunity. It's not as if he's the Grandmaster and this is Contest of Champions, although that is kind of what it becomes. But in any case, we cut to Rutland, Vermont, and Doctor Strange, Submariner, and Hulk have been here before.
That's
in fact, way back in the classic Marvel feature number 2, where the Defenders are introduced, we have the return to Rutland, and we've been there many times before. They previously had faced the hordes of the Dread Dormammu here.
That's right. Hulk remembers too, sort of, but there were no fire hands in the mountain then. What Hulk is referring to is on that page, we see 2 giant demonic hands thrusting up from Bald Mountain.
The hands of Satanish.
That's right. And true believers, this is a good opportunity to suggest that you go back to our very first episode, Defenders Dialogue number 1, and revisit Rutland, Vermont, and this scene for yourself.
Yeah. We have the cultists, the robed cultists, who are the servants of Dormammu, or at least that's what they appear to be. But instead of being able to make immediate short work of them, they find that they're a little stronger than they were because they're not. They're just made to look that way by Satanish, and they're actually these sort of reptilian, demonic servants of Satanish. But even so, the Hulk and Submariner beat the crap out of them, and since they're supposed to find the light in darkness's heart,
unleash the light in darkness.
Unleash the light in dark. They feel like they need to go into the center of this mountain, but Doctor Strange is nowhere to be seen. So the Hulk and Submariner, which is basically sort of like letting the engine run down the street without a driver, go down into the heart of the mountain.
And what I love here, not only has DeMatteis lovingly, this is the 100th issue, and he does this direct callback to the very first appearance of the Defenders, but he also, in one panel, expands Hulk and Namor's relationship. Hulk is willing and ready to take orders from Submariner. They get to the bottom of the volcano, and Hulk says, "Where do we go from here, Fishman?" He's willing to let Namor tell him what to do.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time they're working together as a team, just the two of them. Yeah.
Right.
For sure. There's also a great callback, and this is the kind of thing we tend to see a lot in TV series as well. Let's remind everybody, let's touch on the sort of classic moments that led to this point. And so they encounter Zemnu the Titan and Yandroth, the man machine,
which we've talked about several episodes of this show.
Exactly. Two of the classic Defenders' greatest villains. And of course, these are not actually those characters. They're manifestations created by Satanish. Doctor Strange wakes up. Turns out he was knocked out by the hooded followers of Satanish. And he sends off his astral form, Bryan, and what does he encounter inside the mountain?
Well, he encounters Satanish himself, who has bested the Hulk and Submariner. Satanish holds up his hands above the volcano, above this fury pit, and in each hand is the Hulk and Submariner. One of them is the real pair. The other pair are doppelgangers. Then he drops them into the fire, leaving Doctor Strange to ponder which pair should he save. He only has time to save one pair. And so Doctor Strange unleashes the light in the heart of darkness by using the Eye of Agamotto, the Eye of Truth, and he finds out that one pair is, in fact, Submariner and Hulk, and the other pair are the demonic constructs resembling Zemnu the Titan and Yandroth. He saves his friends, he thinks they've won, and then the volcano explodes, killing Doctor Strange, Hulk, and Submariner.
Apparently. All right, now I need to talk about this next page. Interlude 1, A Dance Hall in Hell. I freaking love this page for so many reasons. The first panel is, it looks more like a tavern in some ways than a dance hall. It's Damon Hellstrom and Satan sitting at a table being served by some kind of demonic waitress, steaming bowls of something. Patsy, the demonic version of Hellcat, is stuck to the wall like Spider-Man and holding a cup of the same thing. And Satan is basically parlaying with his son. Why don't you cast off your mask of righteousness, son, and enjoy yourself? And Patsy says, yes, Damon, can't you see that the Defenders are as good as finished? Forget them. Join us. At least have a drink. Now, it's never a good idea to partake of anything offered to you by demons. But the other thing I want to point out about this first panel, Bryan, is the piano player and what appears to be the lounge singer in this dance hall in hell, which are who are both demonic versions of characters you would see in basically like old Western saloons.
Right.
It's hard to. I think I might have to take a shot of just that panel and post it, because it's hard to describe them without people seeing them. But oh my God! Anyway, the parlay continues, and Satan and Hellcat are trying to, talk him over to their side. Hellcat says, "Listen to Father, Damon. There are none in all creation wiser than he. Think of the pleasures we can share if you," and he says, "you disgust me," and knocks her over. And Satan says, "You are a liar, my son. It's not she who disgusts you. It is Damon Hellstrom. It is your own self. You have fallen in love with this woman, and now the knowledge that she is your sister is driving you mad." And there's a panel of Damon Hellstrom with his head hung. It says, "His silence is admission enough."
That's right. We then transition to a battlefield in hell as Nighthawk, Gargoyle, and Devil Slayer materialize. I think these three should have their own team book every fucking month. C.B. Cebulski, editor-in-chief of Marvel these days, if you're listening, Chris and I will write it for you. But yeah, they materialize in the middle of a war zone. Now, what's odd about this is the combatants. You have prehistoric fighters. You have Prussian soldiers, Roman soldiers, Spanish soldiers, American soldiers. You have tanks, a tank fighting a knight on horseback. You have biplanes in dogfights with stealth bombers. I mean, it's just war from across time and space. And this impacts Nighthawk, Gargoyle, and Devil Slayer as well. Gargoyle, Isaac, is dressed in the garb that he wore during World War I. Remember, he is older than Captain America. Devil Slayer, Eric, is dressed in the uniform that he wore during his days in Vietnam. And Nighthawk has his draft notice that he got in 1969.
And I do love this. I did think a little bit about the person who shall go nameless. We try to keep that stuff off this show. His heart murmur kept him out of the service. They wouldn't have taken me if I'd begged, he says.
Right. We then turn the page, and I want to talk about this panel, if you'll allow me for a minute.
Yeah, please, I do too.
We see Kyle confronted by the mangled, just horrifically mangled, missing arms, missing eyes, etc., corpses of people who died in Vietnam, confronting him about, they didn't have power and influence like him. They had no choice but to go and die. The year was 1981. My father was a Vietnam veteran. He served in the 82nd Airborne, and he did not talk about it. And back then, we did not know what PTSD was, but he certainly had PTSD. And I'm not going to talk about that in length here. I would recommend you go read my novel, Ghoul, which talks all about it. It's pretty much my childhood. But, my dad eventually got help. Talk therapy back then was something new, too, for men of his generation. But he went and got help. And I remember in 1981 reading this issue of The Defenders. And it actually inspired me to try to start a conversation with my dad about the war. And we didn't get very far. He didn't open up to me until years later when we were at the Vietnam Memorial. But it was a start. And that is the power of comic books. And I know Mark DeMatteis listens. This is not a story I've shared with him privately. But yeah, that people write comic books and they think, who's reading them? Well, this teenage kid named Bryan Keene was reading it, and it inspired him to reach out to his father and try to start a conversation. So yay for that panel and yay for this page.
Yeah. No, it is fascinating, actually, from so many perspectives. And it puts me in mind of, and I just want to recommend people are reading along, if they're interested in this topic, it puts me in mind of a poem by actually my favorite poet, the American poet Robert Service, probably my favorite poem of all time, which is called March of the Dead.
Oh, yes.
Which was the one poem I've ever done a live reading of. It's remarkable, and it's tonally appropriate to this. And also, if you've ever seen the episode, the classic Twilight Zone episode, The Passers-by, which refers to the Civil War, it's also similar in tone and topic here. So just recommendations from me on that. Anyway, so Kyle feels shame that he did not, even though he's become Nighthawk and he's helped so many people. He feels shame that he was unable to serve, and so he doesn't defend himself when these specters begin to beat the living hell out of him, until he is rescued by Gargoyle and Devil Slayer. And then the other panel, which shows the dead soldiers receding, walking away into the fog. They only stumble back, shambling off into a suddenly arising shroud of fog where they are soon lost to sight. And, I love this page. The only thing I don't love about this scene is it's Kyle feeling sorry for himself again. But in this case, I think that there was a good reason for DeMatteis to do it.
Right. There's then a battle with all these soldiers from different times, and then Devil Slayer, Eric Simon Payne, meets the ghosts of his past, as the soldiers give way to a horde of wounded children, who confront him, about his desire to win another war, his refusal to give in, no matter how many innocents were lost in the process, no matter how many children were left burned and bloody and lifeless. So we get a darker glimpse into Devil Slayer here than we've had in previous issues.
Yeah.
He may have been involved in some atrocities in Vietnam, and he begins to go down just as Nighthawk went down.
Yeah, and then Gargoyle is approached by Buster Anderson, the specter of Buster Anderson, who was his buddy, his best friend, closer to him than anyone. But
basically, his Bucky,
exactly. Good way to put it. Who had his heart blown clean out on the battlefields in France, while Isaac went right on living. So he's there to make Isaac feel guilty and to try to persuade him to let go and surrender to being overwhelmed here.
And you know what, Chris? I think you're right about Shooter not paying attention to the defenders.
Yeah,
because those two panels of Buster, he has this smoking crater in his chest where his heart should be.
Yeah.
I don't know how the hell that ever got past the Comics Code Authority back then.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's this is such a even though I was joking about the sort of contest of champions element, at least in this scene, it's really, really well executed and well utilized. In any case, Nighthawk arrives and he realizes that, or he thinks perhaps bringing light to the darkness, or whatever the phrase is that you will no doubt correct me on, must mean to actually just talk to all of these various warriors, to lay some wisdom on them, the light of reason. And he gives them a speech about suffering and sacrifice and brotherhood, and all of this, and basically that the most ancient evil known to man wants to sweep over the earth and corrupt everything in its path. Thog has used you once, don't let him use you again. And this light of reason actually works. All these disparate warriors from throughout time throw down their weapons.
That's right. But Thog is having none of that. He sends a plane overhead with 4 nuclear bombs. He drops those nuclear bombs on the battlefield, and Nighthawk, Gargoyle, and Devil Slayer are in the center of those explosions. So seemingly, in this 100th issue, Doctor Strange is dead, Hulk is dead, Submariner is dead, and now Nighthawk, Gargoyle, and Devil Slayer. What is to become of the Defenders? Who's left? Tell us, Chris. what happens in our next interlude?
Well, in our next interlude, we're on a merry-go-round in hell, which, sounds, well, I'm not going to go there. It sounds like Washington, D.C., Bryan, a merry-go-round in hell. So essentially, it's a continuation of Satan sort of trying to mock his son, trying to persuade Hellstrom to come over to his side. But Damon is having a little bit of a tantrum. He literally looks like he's about to stomp his foot like a child, which I thought was a strange choice.
Right.
And he's asking his father why. He says, "Why are you that thick, Damon? How is it that I've succeeded so easily with Patsy, yet failed so dismally with you? You are the flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood, the heir to my throne. I've allowed you the freedom of rebellion, even let you play the hero's role for a time. But the moment has come when my son must either rule beside me in hell or suffer the eternal torments that are mine to give." So now we see what has been Satan's motivation all along. Then we cut to chapter 4, which we probably don't have to spend too much time on, but I will say, Bryan, I find it very interesting why DeMatteis has chosen Silver Surfer, Valkyrie, and Clea to put together.
I agree, and I want to point out the amazing penciling here by Don Perlin. There is literally no background. These three characters materialize in a void empty of light and life, empty of substance. The three of them are quite, along with Silver Surfer's surfboard, are quite literally the only things on the page. There's no background, just a white backdrop behind them. And then Mephisto appears. And it really, especially I'm reading this in the Marvel Essential reprints, which are all black and white. It really allows you to appreciate Perlin's line work.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say the color version, because of the white backgrounds, accomplishes the same. I love the fact that we're able to get depth despite the fact that there's no background.
Right. So why don't you sum up this chapter for us?
Well, I mean, basically to sum it up, Mephisto is their enemy here, and which makes sense because he has faced the Silver Surfer a number of times. And what's interesting here is that Mephisto has essentially chosen these three because they all feel like outsiders no matter where they go, because the Silver Surfer, is from Zenn-La. He's an alien, not from Earth. He always feels lonely and alone on Earth. Clea is also not from Earth. She is the former. She's from what is it called? Dormammu's realm. I can't.
I can't remember the name of his dimension.
No, it's not the negative zone. But in any case, so suffice to say that she always feels also like she doesn't belong. That she's just the sidekick, the apprentice to Doctor Strange. And Valkyrie, of course, is from Asgard. So they always feel like outsiders, and he's trying to take advantage of that. Basically we're in that, and he's trying to influence them, and he's offering Clea. He says, "You only have to say the word, and all your feelings of inconsequentiality will be washed away. No longer need you be the faceless disciple. I will make you queen of your own mystic realm. Doctor Strange himself will bow before you." There you go. And the price. What is it, Bryan? Of course. What is the price that he wants?
She just has to serve him. Just her soul. That's all. Just a small, tiny little soul.
And that's always the price when you're dealing with these things. And they're always lying, right?
Yeah. And he makes the same offer to Valkyrie and to Silver Surfer, and ain't none of them falling for it. Instead, they unleash the light in the heart of darkness. Clea unleashes the light of passion, the light without which we are truly nothing. And she chains up Mephisto with these mystical bonds.
The three of them are able to aim themselves towards what they see as a doorway. Doorway in the distance. And they're flying on the Silver Surfer's board. But as they approach it, they hear a voice. "I'm sorry to say you haven't won anything." The doorway closes. They smash into it. First, There are 3 familiar figures. Then those figures congeal into swirling shapes, bursts of color, and finally there is the void, empty of light and life, empty of substance. It appears they too are dead. But of course,
if the internet had existed, this would be the point when Rich Johnson and Jude Terra over at Bleeding Cool, and hello boys, I know you both listen, you know I love you, but this would be the part where they'd post an article, J.M. DeMatteis kills off the Defenders, and the internet would lose its fucking mind. But no, all we have to do is turn the page, and Doctor Strange says, what we see is all of the Defenders kneeling before Satan, Hellcat, Thog, Satanish, Mephisto, and apparently the son of Satan. And Doctor Strange says, we're alive. And Namor says, but that's impossible. We died. I know it.
So Satan explains, in a sense you did, Prince Namor, but you forget this reality has yet to fully phase into being. So basically, we're still in that place where hell and earth are phasing into one another and merging together. But what they find out is, although they began with 6 days, 6 hours and 6 minutes, they now have only 3 hours left. They've been gone for 6 days.
That's right. Time doesn't flow the same here as it does on regular Earth.
You know, it's interesting, Brian. The more I read these issues, the more I realize how influential this story was for me. You can find echoes of so many of these plot devices in my books down over the years, especially my Peter Octavian novels.
Same here.
Yeah, crazy.
In a future episode, we're going to get to a Gargoyle standalone story where he fights a demon named Null, the Living Darkness. I completely ripped that off for Darkness on the Edge of Town. Didn't realize it until we were going back through rereading.
Yeah, crazy. Anyway, so essentially, Satan is tired of Damon Hellstrom's dissembling and orders Hellcat to kill him. She attacks him. They fight. He hits her again. And he says, you are not the woman I once knew. She is dead. You are a corruption, a distortion. You have no right to live. And so, dear sister, prepare for your doom. He's going to kill her. But then he realizes he can't do it. And he admits that he loves her, which for this character is a big deal.
Oh, it's a huge character moment.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And then he turns on Satan. He says, the road has come round at last, Father. The river has returned to its source. And Satan says, Father versus Son. Your friends must not interfere. And Damon approaches his fellow Defenders and tells them, all right, I'm going to fight the devil. You can't interfere. And Doctor Strange agrees. The Defenders look like they're going to stand down.
They promise. They make a vow that they're going to stand down. And then the fight begins. We have a great panel that shows the elapsed time. It makes me think of Hell's own Karate Kid finale.
Yeah.
And the fight happens, but then it looks like Damon Hellstrom is going to lose because, of course, in the end, it's going to be Satan who's more powerful. And so Doctor Strange uses the Eye of Agamotto. They all link hands, the Defenders, and he siphons some of all of their life energy and supplements Damon's own power, overriding his human half and turning him into pure dark soul.
Yep.
Even then, that is not enough, Brian. And what happens?
Well, no, because he's fighting Satan.
Exactly.
Satan overpowers him.
Grabs his nether trident.
That's right. Stands over him just as Damon stood over Hellcat mere pages ago. Now Satan looms over the son of Satan, preparing to kill him in the same manner. But again, there's silence. Again, there's fear. And Satan cannot do it because he admits he loves his son.
Exactly. So he talked about unleashing the light in darkness's heart, that was his heart he was referring to all along. I am the embodiment of darkness, and even I can know the light of love. Even I. Your world is yours again, and Satan must return to his. There is much to ponder. But here's the tragedy here, Brian. Damon Hellstrom is nothing but pure dark soul now. He belongs nowhere on earth. He says, I belong only by your side. Take me with you. So when Satan leaves, he takes Damon Hellstrom with him. Now, here we get the only part of this whole story that I don't like. I mean, I like it, but I think it's a little heavy-handed. Which is the speech from Satan as he's about to depart. I love what it accomplishes, but I don't know. Anyway, so thank you, defenders, for returning my son to me in payment for your kindness. I can do no less. He returns Hellcat to her mortal Patsy Walker-ness.
But he hints that
there you go.
He has improved her in some way.
Yep. Which we will find out what that means.
And then he tells them that maybe this whole invasion with the six-fingered hand, this whole thing that's been going on for almost a dozen issues, maybe it was just Satan trying to reclaim his child all along. And that perhaps Patsy is not his daughter, but a pawn used to further his ends.
Exactly. And then also, he goes on to say, maybe a secondary goal of his scheme was to force the noble heroes to attempt to gain victory through deceit by going back on their vaunted honor by employing his methods. Then again, perhaps the Lord of Lies has constructed this entire explanation. This is where I loved everything up until this one. Constructed this entire explanation in order to conceal his own burning humiliation, the shame of forfeiting total mastery of humanity. I mean, I like it, but then he continues, perhaps, but none of this, I love this part, but none of you will ever really know.
That's right. And then hell vanishes, Times Square is returned to normal, with the defenders standing in the middle of traffic and a cop approaching them.
Yeah, basically telling them to beat it. Now, that is the end, the wrap-up of this massive epic, my favorite epic, I know yours as well, in the Defenders' history. But it also ends, Bryan, with something you can't see. Because on the Defenders' dialogue letters page, we have a centennial note from J.M. DeMatteis. He sort of gives a little bit of history of the Defenders. And his reading it as a fan. And it includes this. As the years rolled by, I watched with wonder, amazement, amusement, and occasional chagrin, if truth be told, as Doctor Strange and friends meandered down the roads of comic book legendary. Then he gives credit to all the various creators that have come before him. He talks about the issues that he's done, but he says, I feel as if I'm only beginning to understand what I want to do with this team, which is my way of saying that the best is yet to come. Sure, you've heard that line before, but I kid you not. Al, Don, and I have every intention of making Defenders one of the very best books in the Marvel line.
And they do, because the Six-Fingered Hand saga may be over, but their run on the book is just getting started.
Yep. Then he says he's asking for more letters, and he also says, we've got plans, people. Big plans, and this is what made me happy and also made me realize that they were planning far in advance, not the least of which is the entrance of ex-Avenger Hank McCoy, a.k.a. the Bouncing Beast. So the Beast doesn't show up for a few issues here, but he is giving that away at this point. Spoiler warning.
That's right.
And the Beast becomes a super important character in Defenders even after DeMatteis' departure.
Absolutely, he does.
Yep.
You know what else is super important?
The advertisement that you're about to read.
That's right, The Strange Case at Misty Ridge by David Bryan. That's a supernatural cosmic mystery partially inspired by the works of William Hope Hodgson. It's about occult detective Jack Keswick, who survived a tragedy that claimed many lives. His life-changing injuries have forced him into semi-retirement, but now he spends his days investigating reports of paranormal activity. The Strange Case at Misty Ridge by David Bryan is available right now in paperback and on Kindle. In fact, if you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can read The Strange Case at Misty Ridge right now for free. It doesn't get cheaper than that, folks. Free.
I mean, I guess we could pay them to read it.
Oh, yeah, we could do that. Well, actually, Armand, the owner of the Project Entertainment Network, would have to pay them to read it.
All right, Armand, Armand, if you're willing, let us know.
Yeah. Speaking of Armand and the Project Entertainment Network, if you enjoy this show, please check out Chris's other show, Three Guys with Beards. Please check out my other show, The Horror Show with Bryan Keene. And please check out engineer Tommy Clark's other show, The Necrocasticon. Defenders Dialogue's available on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Spotify, and all other platforms. If there's something that you would like us to talk about on the show, or if you'd like to advertise, send me an email, Bryan Keene, Keene, @live.com. Chris, until next week, what do you have to say?
Excelsior, true believers. As always,
that's
Bryan.
beautiful.
As always.
That was beautiful.
All right, well, from Blazing Bryan Keene and Chris Goldenchild. I don't like mine. We'll have to come up with another one for that. But Blazing Bryan Keene is perfect. See you next time on Defenders Dialogue.
Bye-bye.
Do you love comic books and consider yourself a die-hard fan? Then you need to listen to Parlapod. We have news, reviews, and interviews with your favorite pros, all while bringing some serious laughs. New episodes drop every Wednesday in time for New Comic Book Day. Parlapod is available on the Project Entertainment Network, all major podcast outlets, and parlapod.com. Tune in and fuel your fandom with Parlapod.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows
Three Guys with Beards, Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybar, and Chris Golden,
Tom Clark from Necrocast on
Bryan Keene of The Horror Show, Chuck Buda, and Armand Rosamilia of The Mando Method,
Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans,
Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith,
John Urban Sick of Ink Stains,
Bizung's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.